The Iowa Hawkeye women advance to their third consecutive Big Ten championship game. The Hawkeyes defeating the Maryland Terrapins 89-84 on this Saturday. And it's funny, I'm already getting snarky responses on Twitter. Dean responding to me here a couple minutes ago. What do you think of Gabby now? I have nothing against Gabby Marshall. And I love the fact that I said some critical comments about her defensively yesterday. And it's not a new stance. I've made those comments before. I love how all of a sudden that means I'm a hater. I think it's great for Gabby Marshall. Good for her making a bunch of threes today. And if she doesn't make those threes, they don't win this game. Huge day for Gabby Marshall, no question about it, and made some big shots late. How about McKenna Warnock stepping up and making some clutch free throws late in this game as well? If you're new here, this is from the Hawkeye of the Storm, Iowa women's basketball post-game coverage here, and we've got a phone line open. The number to call in to give your take or maybe ask a question about my take is 515-635-1601, 515-635-1601. You can also join by means of clicking the link in the description below. There's a little StreamYard link in the description. You can call in by means of StreamYard as well. I'll also throw it up in our live chat to call in to recap the Hawkeyes' impressive victory. Let's not forget that Iowa lost to this same Maryland Terrapins team. Lost to them by, 28, 30 points a couple weeks ago. And I'm not shocked at all that the Hawkeyes are going to be seeing Ohio State. What a performance by the Buckeyes. We can talk about that as well. Coming back from 24 down against the Indiana Hoosiers, the number one seed in this tournament. And so it'll be the Buckeyes and the Hawkeyes on Sunday afternoon at approximately 4 p.m. All right, let's get to our live chat before we break down this game more and get to your live calls. A reminder that Iowa Smokehouse is sponsoring our show. We've got some of their information down on the bottom ticker. So check out awesome deal from Iowa Smokehouse down in Albia. And a reminder about Iowa Smokehouse as it relates to this wonderful local company. Again, it's an Iowa company that's supporting this channel, supporting this show. You can check out their products by visiting iowasmokehouse.com. And you can get 15% off your order by using this code Hawkeye at checkout. That's the code Hawkeye at checkout at iowasmokehouse.com. Tasting is believing with their beef jerky, their meat sticks. I had some of their salsa a little bit ago. It's awesome stuff. And again, all their products can be found at iowasmokehouse.com. $50 orders, you'll get free shipping. How about that deal from the guys down at Iowa Smokehouse? And we appreciate them sponsoring our postgame coverage here, men and women, throughout the month of March. All right, let's get to our live chat. We start with CJ. This is not a CJ. You're not the only one who feels this way. Win despite the terrible officiating. I'll say this: Diamond Miller. How many times did she get to the free throw line? I think she drew 11 or 12 fouls in this game. Shot like 14, 15, 16 free throws somewhere in there. Let me grab the stats here. That is a very high number. I will say this. I don't think the officiating was all that bad. I don't mean to sound like Gary Close here. I don't think the officiating was as bad as maybe some people are making it out to be. And I'm not saying, CJ, you're doing this, but I wouldn't necessarily call it terrible. I thought most of those fouls called in favor of Diamond Miller were probably good calls. Iowa does have an issue defending dribble penetration. We've talked about that before. It's not just about Gabby Marshall. But you do feel like Iowa has a problem just defending without fouling in general. And, you've got to maintain verticality. And more often than not, Diamond Miller, long arms, really nifty around the basket. And she's aggressive, right? She attacks. And I think at times Iowa struggled to maintain verticality. And I think most of those were correct calls for the game. Diamond Miller, let me give you the free throw stats for Miller. 12 of 16 from the free throw line. She kept him in this game, folks. No one else on the team attempted more than 4 free throws in the game. All right, let's get to our first caller. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line? All right, nobody there. We can move on. Let's go to Jason. Great overall performance by all the starters. Let's talk about the Hawkeye starters. 21 points for McKenna Warnock. Boy, quiet. Felt like a quiet 21, didn't it? I mean, she made some big free throws there down the stretch. but a quiet 21 for McKenna, 21 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 6 of 6 from the free throw line. Again, huge free throws. Costly turnover there at the end, committed by Caitlin Clark on the offensive foul, a push-off, which was a bit questionable. I'll give you that. But McKenna Warnock saving the day with a couple big free throws and then made 2 more big free throws to seal the deal, put them up by 5 late. Monica Sonano had 15 points, 8 boards for Monica, along with 2 assists. She was 7 of 12 from the field, 1 of 1 from the free throw line. Caitlin Clark, 22 points for her, 9 assists, 5 boards, 5 of 13 from the three-point line for Caitlin, 7 of 18 overall from the field. Gabby Marshall, the 21 big points, 7 threes. Yes, 7 threes on 13 attempts for Gabby. Almost all of those were open. That is nothing against Gabby Marshall. Credit her for making the open ones, and that's what she's got to do, right? I mean, I know it's easier said than done, but she's going to find herself, especially when we get down to tournament play, which we're in tournament play, but I'm talking even into the NCAA tournament. There is going to be plenty of opportunities for Gabby Marshall to knock down open threes. The question is, can she do that? She's struggled at times, and the bottom line is she made them today. And when she makes free throws, this team is a lot better. Okay. Let's see here. Comment here from Freedom Liberty, who disagrees with me again. I completely disagree, Corey. The refs were definitely biased. Our players were mugged all game and didn't get calls. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying the officiating was great. I didn't think it was terrible. I think part of what we're looking at here with Iowa women, and again, give them credit. These 2 games in this Big Ten tournament, I think, have been great tune-up games for the NCAAs, partially because of how these 2 teams play. And yes, they're familiar opponents. But we talked about Maryland, Purdue's physicality yesterday. Maryland takes that a step further. They're, without question, I think, the most athletic team in the Big Ten Conference. They are very physical, and maybe the officiating favored them a bit, perhaps because the officials just let more occur. But the fact that Iowa was still able to win this game and score 89 in spite of maybe some questionable calls and certainly a boost in physicality, I think is a good sign for times to come. It was a weird stat line. When you look at those numbers, I read 21, 15, 22, 21, and 10 from Iowa's starters. They had 3 girls come off the bench. They totaled 0, 0, and 0 with 2 field goal attempts total. 2 field goal attempts for Iowa's bench, 0 points. Incredible. Hannah Stulke, 0 of 1 from the field. And Lisa Bluter, we talked about this yesterday, continuing to shorten that lineup. And as she does that, you're going to see less and less minutes for, women like Sydney Afalter, even Molly Davis and Hannah Stulke, who have been regular parts of this rotation. Now, Stulke will find her time, especially when Sonano's in foul trouble. But it was good to see the starters play so well together, and you hope that they get more production from their bench than 0, 0, and 0. Obviously, that's hard to sustain as well. But, boy, a lot of firepower in that starting lineup. And when's the last time you've seen a starting lineup account for 89 points at any college level? We're talking about men or women. That is impressive. You can look at it either glass half full or glass half empty. Kelly, thank you for reminding everybody, if you're new here or if you've just joined the stream, please hit that like button. Please hit the little thumbs up button. It does help us in the algorithm. And, of course, if you have not done so already, please share the show out on social media. I would appreciate that as well. ZJ, happy about Gabby and her success? Absolutely. Eric, again, were the refs really that bad? I mean, we can look at free throw attempts. How about we look at free throw attempts? Maryland shot 24 free throws to Iowa's 15. So there's definitely a discrepancy there. Again, Diamond Miller accounted for 16 of those. Warnock shot 6 free throws. Clark shot 6 free throws. I do think a lot of that was how Diamond Miller attacks you and some of the intangibles that she has that nobody else does. And she is a hard guard. That's why of anybody in this conference, she's right there at the top of as far as pro prospects. And certainly Caitlin Clark will have an opportunity to play at the next level in a year or two whenever she chooses to do so. But Diamond Miller is a future WNBA star. I don't know if Clark is or not. I hope she is. But Diamond Miller has what you want physically in a WNBA player. So, and Kelly, she says every time Diamond Miller touched the ball, she flailed around. They called a foul on Iowa. It was ridiculous. So a lot of people feel like the officiating was a major factor today. CJ talks about the mugging that was going on, no calls. And Matt, yes, Gabby, what a couple of games for her. Let's go to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line, our first actual caller of the day. Ryan, welcome to the show, sir.
Wow, that was a quick call.
You're on it today, sir. Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, you are you're giving our sponsor some extra airtime. That's okay. That's great stuff, isn't it?
Well, back here I got about 5 or 6 more packs as well because
That
let's
$50
face
order.
it. Oh, it was well north of 50. But I did get free shipping and my 15% off.
You got it, buddy.
And it's a great thing, Corey, because not only do you have great sponsors with great products, but I get to eat this stuff while I watch the Hawkeyes avenge a really bad loss at Maryland. And we don't win this game without, I'm a Caitlin crazy, but Gabby Marshall, oh my God.
Yep.
I mean, Gabby Marshall should never have to buy another dinner in Iowa City in her life after tonight. And after tomorrow, probably the same thing.
She's been really good here for a stretch. Let's not forget, she was in a slump about 2/3 through the Big Ten season, and she was really struggling from behind the arc. And, one way to and we saw this with Peyton Sandfort, the one way to find yourself out of a slump is just to keep shooting. Now, she's not as natural of a three-point shooter as Peyton Sandfort is, but she has shot her way out of this slump, and it helps when you're open. I'm not taking anything away from Marshall, but teams have really made it hard on Sonano these last 2 games, and when you collapse down on Monica, it's going to create more opportunity for Iowa's outside shooters.
Well, it comes down to, when you got a couple big guys that are limiting Phillip, and a guy like Sanford or Tony Perkins or somebody, can make up that difference, it's really no different. And the Iowa women, how many years in a row are they in the Big Ten? 3. Yeah.
3 straight years.
I mean, Lisa Bluter, good Lord, what a legend. And I remember in 1998 when I graduated from Iowa, I'm 47 now. I wondered if our women's program was going to be possibly sunk. And in 2001, Lisa came over from Drake. I was living in Des Moines at the time, and she did a great job at Drake. And I cannot tell you just how proud I am of these ladies. They have a really nice player named Clark, who's arguably top 5 best women's player of all time, and she's not even close to done yet. Are you kidding me? I mean, this is much watched TV, right? It really is. It is. I had the whole family watching tonight, and I'm beyond the moon how proud I am of the ladies. And
look, Ryan, I've been critical of Lisa Bluter at times. I've been critical of Fran at times. I've been more than critical of Kirk Ferentz. I'm not afraid to be critical of any of the Iowa coaches, and I like all 3 of them. But here's the deal. You've got to give credit where credit is due. And Lisa Bluter has figured out this tournament. She's figured out this tournament. Now, can they win in the NCAA tournament? We'll see. They've been to a Sweet 16, obviously, a lot more recently than the Iowa men have. But up until last season, the Iowa men hadn't won a Big Ten title since, 2006? It's hard to win in this tournament, whether we're talking the men's game or the women's game. You have 14 teams all in the tournament trying to compete for a title. For the women to have gotten to the championship game now 3 years in a row and have a chance to repeat the second year in a row, that is really impressive, regardless of the defensive criticisms and regardless of what they do in this tournament coming up in about a week and a half. Regardless, impressive stuff.
It's good looking stuff.
They got some good, by the way, some good, I was told, and I haven't done this yet, they got some good lagers, some good beers that go with the meat products from Iowa Smokehouse, but we can talk about that another day.
We'll talk about that another day. I'm going to look for a glass of milk soon to celebrate. But anyway, as far as Fran goes, last year, I mean, my knock on Fran, as much as I really do appreciate him, my knock on Fran was always that he struggles in the Big Ten tournament. Then they win it, only to put up a turd show against Richmond in the first round, which was probably about as good of a draw as you could ask. So,
That is what you are right. It was a good. We forget that it was a good draw. You had Providence that advanced.
yeah. I mean,
I thought it was a pretty good draw. I agree.
I was over the moon with our draw, and then we had one of those one out of every 5 nights where we just can't hit the three. Keegan, I think, got 21 in that game and was like, our only. He wasn't even Keegan in that game. But, we lost, and we lost fair and square because of athletic people. Now, 2 years ago, we got the Oregon draw where they were the 7 and we were the 2. And, they had quick guards who just ran all over us.
Can you believe I don't mean to. This is a women's basketball show, and we'll move on. But
Yeah.
there's no one else. We got one other caller on hold. But you're absolutely right. The game last year, great draw. The year before, Iowa was a 2. We realized that Iowa was a 2. Think about that. The
With
men were a
with
2.
one of the best player, top 10 player in Big Ten history
Well, that
on
team
your
had
team,
and
and Jordan Bohannon,
Joe
who
Weiss.
and Wieskamp. So you had 3 NBA players on that team. Now, not to age myself, I told you I'm 47, but I remember the 87 team really, really well. Best team in Iowa history. And we had 7 NBA players on that team. BJ, Roy, Ed, Gamble, Lojas, Bill Jones, and Les Jepson. And so, I mean, how crazy is that? We had nothing even close to talent. I would argue 93 with Chris Street alive would have probably gone far. And then, you had the 99 team that made it to the Sweet 16 with 7 seniors plus Dean Oliver. J.R. Koch, who was on the other night, was on that team and got drafted. And Settles, not Settles of old, though. He was a good player, but he was, more like a 10, 11, 12 point a game guy instead of an 16, 17, 18 point a game guy. But anyway, not to divert too much, next year Hannah Stolke looks like she's going to be a really, really good player to take Monica's spot. We got 4 real seasoned players, and Bluter clearly knows how to win in a tournament. I think we could be national championship contenders next year. I really do. Clark is Clark.
They're going to play a little different, right? Because they're not. I mean, unless Addison O'Grady takes a big step forward, you're probably going to see Hannah Stolke at the 5 a lot.
Oh yeah.
And so she's a totally different player. I think she's more of a 4. But if they play her at the 5, do we see Jada Giamfi some? I mean, they've got some reserves right now that aren't really playing much. We know Warnock is moving on. You get Martin and Marshall back. You get Clark back. You get, as you mentioned, Hannah Stolke back. So, I don't know. I mean, I think South Carolina, there's a clear gap between South Carolina and everyone else right now. But there's not a gap in the Big Ten between anybody. And Iowa, honestly, I think Iowa's the best team in this conference. I know they lost to once.
Absolutely are. They absolutely are. And we're going to prove it tomorrow when I call in your show and eat a little more of my large order of Iowa Smokehouse.
So here's the deal.
I got a month's worth of it.
Real quick, Ryan, I just want to tell you. So the plan tomorrow is stand by because there'll be some more information coming. I've not finalized everything, but we are going to have 2 post games tomorrow, and they likely will not be. They'll likely be back to back. They'll likely both be in the evening. So the men's post game, the men's game is at 1. We're not done here, but I just want to tell everybody the men's game is at 1 o'clock tomorrow on BTN. We'll have Iowa post game with Coach Gary Close likely later in the evening, so it will not be immediately following the game, I don't think. We'll have the Iowa women taking on Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game at 4 p.m. So we'll likely do a post-game show right after that game and then follow that with Iowa men's basketball post-game with Coach Close. That's the plan right now, but stay tuned for more information. But
are you going to have a women's representative, ex-player, coach?
I'll tell you that. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great?
Is there any way of getting Kara Consuegra, who is the Charlotte coach, to watch the game and come on? Or obviously you got swag with ex-Iowa coaches, so
well, I'll see.
Just asking.
I don't know if I got swags, but I'll see what strings I can pull in 24 hours. How's that sound?
I love it. Great day to be a Hawkeye, and tomorrow we're going to be the champions, and I think we're going to be a 2 seed. And we're going to have a lot of partying to do tomorrow. Let's be a 2 seed. And then I just hope to goodness that we don't do what happened last year where you're on fire. You're playing your best basketball of the year. I'm talking about the men. And then,
well, the women too. The women too.
Yeah. And then your legs are gone or whatever, because everybody else has to play these games. And God forbid I say this, but is the narrative, we're okay, we lost against, I don't know who we'd play, the 6 seed or 7 seed, whoever, in the first round, but got rested and then went on a tear and made it to the Sweet 16. I won a Sweet 16 2 weeks ago when I was on. We talked, and you said a 7 seed was pretty much the ceiling, and I agreed with you.
Did I say that?
Yeah, you did. And I agreed with you. But that was after we got blown out by Northwestern. Now I think it might be better than that.
I think it's close to the ceiling. I think maybe they climb to a 6 if they can win in the Big Ten tournament.
Right. At the time, though, when we got beat by 20 by Northwestern, and you said, well, right now I think, because I talked about 8-9 hell, and you said 7 is probably the ceiling.
Yeah.
Now I agree that it might be a 6.
Maybe.
If, kind of like last year, it's no different. We won the Big Ten tournament and got a 5 and stunk up the joint against the 12-seeded Richmond team. I just don't want that to happen again. My last comment is Tony Perkins is going to be the difference. In the NCAA tournament, you need really, really good guards.
Hard play. Yep.
And Tony has shown that he can be that alpha male guard who wills you to win if he has to. We're going to need a big game out of him, from here on out. But I think if we make a Sweet 16 or further, because I don't think there's a whole lot of separation this year, Perkins is gonna need to be the guy.
And listen,
Chris gets his 21 or 22, whatever. Philip is Philip, and you need Tony to just shine.
We have seen Aaron Eulis play really good basketball too. Those two guys need to play their best basketball. I mean, you talk about it. I think there's something to be said for guard play, and Tony's had two of his best games of his career these last two out. He's got to maintain that. He's got to sustain that tomorrow. Like tomorrow's a big day for him, regardless of who they play. They're at home against Nebraska. He needs to go out with a bang. And then we had 3 straight big performances. And boy, that's momentum heading into Chicago. So
absolutely. Thanks for taking my call, and we'll talk soon. And go Hawks! I'm really proud of the ladies tonight.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you tomorrow, Ryan. Thanks. All right. Martin wants to know, is Iowa locked in as a 2 seed in the tournament, or does a win tomorrow get them a 1? Well, that's a good question. I was thinking about that as Ryan was talking. Indiana lost. I don't know. I'm certainly no bracketologist, but Indiana losing helps. Iowa beating Maryland helps. Maybe if enough pieces fall in place, I'd have to look at where the other teams that are projected right now on that 1 line. But certainly, I think Iowa's a lock at the 2 right now. You win tomorrow, maybe you get to a 1. But I think you are locked in as a 2 seed. We also have to remember, and we've talked about this on the men's side, we also at times put way too much emphasis on the Big Ten tournament, and a lot of these committee members, they don't put. There's no reason for them to put more emphasis on the Big Ten tournament than any other Big Ten game. So tomorrow's a big game. It's an opportunity, another really good win, and I would guess a quad 1 win. But I don't think it necessarily is the deal breaker one way or the other. I think they're solid at the 2, right, or at a 2 spot right now, Martin. Let's go to our next caller. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line? Okay, nobody there. Let's go to our next Iowa Smokehouse caller. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Yeah, Corey, this is Pat from Minnesota.
Hey, Pat, how are you?
And great. I went to the game yesterday. I couldn't make it today, so I watched today's game on TV. But unbelievable performance yesterday. I mean, Gabby, I've been kind of bashing her all season, and even for her defense and not hitting the threes. But yesterday, she was all over the floor. She played a great defensive game, so I've completely changed my attitude towards her on defense. She played a great defensive game yesterday. And, of course, today she was unbelievable. But I also want to mention the crowd yesterday when I walked into the stadium and sat down, and the roar of the Iowa crowd when it was definitely Carver North when the Iowa team came out yesterday, which was fantastic. And the players, you could see they acknowledged it. They were clapping along, and the coaches were smiling and waving at the crowd. We must have had, I'm guessing, 7,000 people there. I don't know. Was it just packed with Iowa? Anyway, yesterday I thought I just wanted to talk about that game briefly because I was there. And I saw Caitlin. I think I would have gotten the technical if I were her too, because there were really 2 bad calls before that. The last foul, and when she got the technical, she was getting bumped around all day. There were a couple of fouls right before that before she got bumped, and I thought they should have been called. They weren't. And then, of course, that foul that she made, I thought she got all ball from what I saw. But anyway, so that's yesterday. And then, of course, today it was just unbelievable performance, as everybody has mentioned earlier. And what the one thing about Ohio State, when we played them the first time, they didn't have one of their best players. And she's back now. She started playing the last few games. So that's going to be a bit harder this time. And I just hope our team's got enough stamina because the starters, as we all know, played just about the entire game. I've got all the stats, but I think you covered those earlier. But Marshall, I think I wrote down for Gabby. Let's see, what do I have here? Gabby has made 22 of her last 41 three-point shots, which is just incredible.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I just wanted to add my 2 cents worth to the conversation. And they're just a fantastic team to watch. And of course, today it was a brilliant performance by every player. So
absolutely. Do you remember who? I'm just curious, Pat. Since you brought up, first of all, you are from Minnesota, correct?
Well, I originally went to Iowa, got a graduate degree there. I was in like 7 years in Iowa City between undergraduate and graduate programs. And then I moved back to get a graduate program because I'd missed all of the Hayden Fry era and just about Tom Davis. So I moved back to Iowa City so I could get involved with Hayden and Tom Davis. Got my wife, my daughter went off to college. I only had 8 kids, so that way we could live anywhere. So I moved back to Iowa and lived there for 10 years, went to all the games. And then when I was in school there, I, of course, went to even some practices. I was a big sports fan now for 70 years for Iowa. But anyway, then we had to move. We moved up here because my daughter had her first grandchild. So we moved up here to Minnesota. And of course, I'm just thankful we get the Big Ten Network, and now you've got your show. So I feel like I'm still, part of the Hawk crowd. And then of course, yesterday I finally got to see an Iowa game up here. And I had tears in my eyes when that crowd was cheering and the band, and it was just fantastic sight to see.
I was going to say, you have to be proud Hawkeye with the Big Ten tournament in Minneapolis. I am curious because I had a friend of mine ask me today, what do you think the ratio of Hawkeyes to Terrapins in the crowd is? And I guessed about 5-1, maybe 4-1, maybe a little bit more reasonable. What would you guess as far as Hawkeyes?
Well, today it was hard to see, but hard to tell. But I think I would say yesterday it was like, God, it seemed like it was about 8-1. I think. There was very few fans from the opponents, the Purdue fan base, but Iowa had to be. I think we were everywhere you looked were Iowa fans coming in. I saw very few Purdue fans, and they just had a small contingency there. But we were huge. And today, I imagine it's pretty close the same. And I will say this about Target. Playing at Target Center, it's a horrible place for the acoustics. On TV, you just don't hear. On TV, you don't even hear the loudness of the crowd. But there, it's even worse. At least I hear the roar every once in a while. But they just play this loud music all the time, but in the breaks and even when the teams come out to practice. And but anyway, much rather watch an Iowa game at Carver Hawkeye. That's for sure.
Absolutely. No, I think you're absolutely right. Great point, too, because there are a lot of Hawkeye. I would guess you see quite a few Hawkeye alum up in your area. And I know a lot of people complained about the Big Ten tournament being moved to Minnesota. And of course, it's not going to be there every year. I like it, and I think it's advantage Iowa. It may not be as centralized for the Big Ten Conference, but, the men I think are going to be up there next year.
Yeah.
I like that. I like the idea. And look, the Big Ten Championship the tournament has long been played in Indianapolis and Chicago. Those are advantage. I know they're more centralized, but those are advantage Purdue, advantage Indiana, advantage Northwestern. So if I'm Iowa fans up in Minnesota or up northern Iowa, get out to these games. And maybe tomorrow is too short a notice, but the Big Ten tournament, at least on a rotational basis, is here to stay in Minneapolis. So I'm glad that you made it out, Pat, and we'll see. Are you going to go to the game tomorrow?
I'm not going to be able to tomorrow either. My daughter's not going to. I can't get in all that traffic with my age now.
Yeah.
I'm 80 now, so that's downtown traffic and everything. And so she got loose and took me yesterday because she knew how much I love this team. And of course, being an Iowa fan all my years. But anyway, so she took me there yesterday. And she's not even a basketball fan. And I've raved about how great this team is and how much I love this team. And how much I think Caitlin Clark, now this could be disputed, obviously, but I think Caitlin Clark's the best all-around basketball player I've ever seen in my 70 years of watching college basketball. Because she does everything. She's not the best defensive player, but she's terrific, bringing the ball down, and she shoots from, she can hit from everywhere, drives to the basket, takes a beating every game. It's just like yesterday, they just beat her up. Today wasn't quite as bad, but, she takes that beating every game and she keeps coming back for more. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
And Pat, that's a great point. And I've talked about this before. It's really, I think we're going to look back at this stretch of years, a stretch of seasons down the road and think, man, we kind of took it for granted because what a stretch. When you think about Caitlin Clark, you think about Megan Gustafson, and then you look at the men, you got Keegan Murray and Luka Garza. Luka Garza might be the best offensive player to ever play for the Iowa men. I know there's other guys you can throw into the mix there, certainly. But it's been an incredible stretch from an individual standpoint. The only thing lacking is tournament success. So maybe we'll get that this year. But you're absolutely right. Don't take that for granted because she is phenomenal. And I would venture to say Garza and Clark might be the two best offensive players we've ever seen play Iowa basketball.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. So I hope she gets National Player of the Year. She certainly deserves it. There's no question in my mind. I've seen a lot of basketball. I've watched a lot of top women games too, And now Diamond Miller was great today. I mean, she's a really good player.
Yes, she
but
is.
She's not the overall player that Caitlin Clark is, and very few are that good overall. So, and one thing about coming tomorrow now, the Ohio State game, I watched them play yesterday, and they have a player that I think I mentioned this earlier. She was out all season for about the last 7 games or so. She's getting more and more minutes. She's a great player, and she played a great game today for Ohio State. So she's going to be available now to them. That's one problem. The other problem is they've got a fantastic press. Maybe you saw some of that game. I don't know, but It reminded me of the Tom Davis press, which it was really effective against Indiana. Indiana had like a 22-point lead, I think, at one
24.
point. 24. Yeah, thanks. And then Ohio State threw that press on, and just really was effective. I mean, I got tons of points off of that. So that's going to be another really good game tomorrow. Like I said before, I hope we have enough stamina to, because our bench obviously thin. I wish the all Nebraska player would have seen more time all year. I've been hoping for her to come in and get more time. She just got in a minute yesterday, and I pointed her out to my daughter, and I watched her in the pregame, and she just kept drilling threes. So she's going to be fantastic.
She's going to be good
eventually.
Too. Yeah.
But anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. And thanks again, Corey. Love your show.
Thank you, Pat. Appreciate the call, sir. Yeah, good stuff from Pat, and he's absolutely right. I mean, Taylor McCabe's going to be the real deal. She's young. She's a freshman. We haven't seen Jada Giamfi. I mean, she's I think she's maybe got some athleticism that Iowa has lacked at times. And so it will be interesting to see as it relates to the future. It's going to look a lot different next year, but let's just enjoy the moment now. I think we've got a fun March ahead, and a lot of that features a high octane offense. So it'll be fun to watch here moving forward. Appreciate our callers here to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. The phone line is open, 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. James, welcome to the show, James.
Hey, John, I was a little late today. For some reason, it didn't send me a notification you were on. And then I was like, the game is late. And I was like, it's been a while since I checked in and I seen you were here. So
I appreciate that, sir. How are you?
Good. First off, one name we forget to talk about too, because she's out with injury, is Feuerbach.
Yeah,
I forget she's even on the roster until I seen some the other day where and I was like, dang, I forgot she's on the roster. But anyways, I feel like this is a game where we talked about Molly yesterday, and she making threes, but she always shot them, and I think that's something you want to see too, like her be confident in shooting that at least. So she didn't make any, but she at least shot a couple, at least 2 that I seen her at least shoot.
Yeah, I mean it's hard if Molly Davis can't make open threes. It's going to be hard for her to play a lot.
It seemed like Warnock was struggling. Warnock plays a little better defense though, at least, but she was struggling a little bit from three. She hit a couple, but like
she's 3 of 8.
She shot. Yeah, I mean that's not bad either. It seemed like she missed more, but it's just like when you get that kind of performance from somebody like Gabby Marshall, you obviously always want to win that game, and I think that's the most important thing because like you don't get performances like that from a lot of people. A lot of times, and you don't want to lose a game like that where somebody hits 7 threes because then that's kind of just like down. It gets you down a little bit sometimes. Or not 7. I don't know how many she hit, but
one could argue. Here's the deal, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I think you're absolutely right. What we saw from Marshall, and Clark's going to give you what she gives you. She gives you 22 and 5 tonight, along with 9 assists, but and just 2 turnovers. So good day for Clark in that respect. But let's not forget McKenna Warnock had 21 points, 8 boards. So yeah, she was 3 of 8 from 3, not terrible. She made some big free throws. She was perfect from the free throw line, 6 of 6, 6 of 12 overall from the field. Played 30 minutes. Big game for her. And yeah, she probably could shoot the 3 ball even better. So, the one girl who was off today was Kate Martin, who 0 for 5 from 3. I think Kate Martin's the best individual defender on this team, and she obviously can get hot from 3. We've seen her get hot from 3, but she chipped in 9 boards as well, along with 7 assists. So just a complete performance from a lot of different players, a lot of them, all of them really in the starting lineup. So, I couldn't agree more. And we keep talking about the future. Kylie Feuerbach, she's an interesting one because when she transferred from Iowa State, I don't know, again, I maybe had a misconception of what we were going to get from her, kind of like I had a misconception of what we were going to get from Molly Davis. But you wonder, a year of rehab, what will she look like when she comes back? That is going to be fascinating.
But, and then like one thing you talk about too is like, I think hurt Kate Martin a little bit. She got in foul trouble in the first half. So like, I think that kind of, hurt her a little bit because, she sat out for a while and they put Sydney in. So like, I think they kind of hurt her a little bit, getting her shot down. Sometimes sitting for a little bit can kind of get you a little rusty. But it's overall good just to see them play this hard, and especially against a Maryland team who, whether or not you win tomorrow or not, I think this is obviously, like you said, I think this is the best team in the Big Ten. So for you to get that win, and when Clark went down too, I kind of got a little nervous when Clark went down for a second. She did hit the ground pretty hard, and for her to come back right back in was kind of surprising to me because I thought she'd be out just a little bit. But
that was good news because when she went down, I didn't know if it was
yeah,
a knee or what it was, but you watch the replay, looked like she got the wind knocked out of her. I think the one one fear there is perhaps she suffered some sort of a
yeah,
bone bruise or something because she hit the floor hard. So yeah, it was good to see her come back, and I thought she made some. I'll give Caitlin Clark a lot of credit. She was tough today. She didn't just make shots; she was tough. And some may say, "Well, Corey, she's always tough." I mean, watching her take that big hit, go down for one possession, come right back in, that is toughness. And my definition of toughness as it relates to this conversation. She had a couple of plays earlier in the don't forget that play, the where she got wind knocked out of her. She was taking a charge.
yeah, yep.
And so that is what you want from your leaders and from your point guard and from your tough players. And that's leading by example. I applaud Caitlin Clark because obviously she's great offensively. When she's making those gritty plays, she's even better.
For sure. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens tomorrow. And I think they went, I mean, Aston Grady didn't play a lot, but you've seen her out there a little bit too. I know we talked about her. I think she played like 1 or 2 minutes, but you're still seeing her out there a little bit. So, like, it's just interesting to see, like, what they do tomorrow. Hopefully they can get the win, but, it's just good for them, morale and momentum to get that, especially not saying Caitlin had an off night, but you get such big nights from the other two at least. And I think that's the biggest part. And then I don't know how much Monica had, but, she always kind of consistent sometimes. She'll miss a little bit of bunnies here and there, but she always gets consistent down there, or you can always know to go to her a lot of times. But one thing I thought was interesting, I don't know what your thought was, they didn't really double Caitlin. They just like face guarded her. And I don't know maybe if that because like yesterday I felt like Indiana. Who did they play yesterday? Purdue. They gave us the issue with doubling her. It kind of got her in her head. They didn't really double her. They just face guarded her the whole time. I don't know if maybe that was their strategy and it just didn't work out as well, or what. But it'll be interesting to see what Ohio State does with their strategy.
Yeah, it will be. And what will Ohio? How will Ohio State handle Monica Sonano? Because that's 2 straight games now, and Iowa wasn't great against Purdue yesterday, but I mean, both of these 2 teams have left the Iowa guards open from 3 and said, "We don't believe you can beat us." And today, I mean, especially today, Gabby Marshall, McKenna Warnock, Kate Martin struggled from outside. Caitlin Clark's always going to burn you. Especially Gabby Marshall. She made him pay. And so I wonder how will this I wouldn't be shocked if Monica Sonano goes for 30 tomorrow. I just wouldn't be shocked based upon quick turnaround. And if you're Ohio State, you got to make some quick decisions of how you're going to approach Iowa. They, of course, did they play them twice this year?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did. I know we played them once and they didn't have their best player. I don't know if we played them twice. But the one time I know they didn't have one of their better players.
Yeah, I think they just played them once.
Yeah, I think they played them once. Yeah, because they didn't have their best player that one game, and I think that's why Ohio State fans were like, "Well, we might have beat y'all if we had their best player, or one of their best players." But I don't know. It's just interesting to see because, and then one thing I noticed too is they did kind of double, not Monica as much, but Monica got the ball and they brought somebody down there, to kind of dig at it while you had somebody guarding Caitlin, and that's what left them so open from the corner. So or left Gabby open, left McKenna open. So I don't know how they're gonna play it, but that's always the interesting way to see how they how somebody plays. Caitlin Clark, and just see how we can kind of expose it. And I think we did a pretty good job of that today for sure.
Absolutely, James. We hope to hear from you tomorrow, James, and hopefully we're talking about 2 victories, 2 big ones.
Yeah, it's a long day tomorrow, but hopefully we can get 2 big victories for sure.
Sounds good, James.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate James calling our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. And speaking of our call-in line, the line is open, 515-635-1601, 515-635-1601. And Iowa Smokehouse, a reminder to check out their great products at iowasmokehouse.com. They're sponsoring our March Madness coverage here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. If you want a better quality snack for a great price, visit iowasmokehouse.com. They offer awesome meat products, even some salsas, barbecue sauces, and ketchups. Tasting is believing. Use that code Hawkeye for 15% off your order. That's the code Hawkeye, singular, for 15% off your order. Yes, tasting is believing. All right, let's see. Let's go back to I believe we've got a caller on hold here. Let's go to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame. Who's on the line? Hey, Roger, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
This is Roger. I'm
Yes.
doing great. I'm doing just fine. Really enjoyed the game today.
Absolutely.
Caitlin kept off the sidelines, and that made him leave the outside wings open for the shots.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, between the attention that Caitlin Clark gets and Monica Sonano gets, and that's the other thing we're not talking about. We talk about a short prep for Ohio State. Once we get to tournament play, you would expect these short preps, these short turnarounds for these tournament teams to present problems in trying to stop. I mean, you already have your hands full trying to stop those two, but it's going to make it harder and harder when you add a Gabby Marshall who's making threes. That's going to make the scouting report that much more difficult.
Yeah, the other thing is how much Caitlin gets just absolutely just beat up during these games, and the fact that she's still able to make the passes she makes is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. She is incredible, and her post feeds. We'll talk. I know if you follow the men, Roger, we talk about Connor McCaffrey's ability to feed the post. Let's talk about Caitlin Clark's ability to feed the post, because she is an expert at finding angles, especially through the air. Connor, I would say, is better at the bounce pass entry, but you're right. I mean, Monica's footwork and her ability to seal, you got to give a lot of credit to Jan Jensen and that staff, and certainly Megan Gustafson, who I think was a big influence on Monica Sonano's game. But with those two, it's a deadly combination. And you're right. Clark does take a beating, and that's why I was impressed with her resilience today, because she had to toughen through. That was a physical game. Maryland is a tough team to play.
Yeah, I mean, people have to realize how far she's making those passes. I mean, she's not making it past 15 foot from the wing. She's making it 20, 25 feet from the basket.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's impressive, and you don't see a lot of guards in the men or women's side able to make those passes.
So, I mean, I think Ohio State, they got J.C. Sheldon back. They're going to be a different team than we played the first time. But when you can keep the ball in the middle of the floor in the point guard's hands, and your wing players are sitting out there, and if Kate Martin steps up at all tomorrow, I mean, that's tough to handle defensively. You can't double team somebody when the wings are wide open.
Yeah, and J.C. Sheldon made some big plays down the stretch in that game. Had 12 points for the day. Came off the bench. We'll see if she starts tomorrow. But excellent point. They that's one thing. If you're Ohio State, they've got maybe a little bit more proven bench production. I mean, obviously Iowa didn't get a whole lot from Hannah Stulke today, but after Stulke, you're not getting a lot of offensive production out of Molly Davis, and certainly out of Sydney Falter, and that's basically it. I mean, Addison O'Grady played a couple minutes, but we'll see. That's another storyline. How with the level of production that the Iowa women's starters got today, and how much they contributed, you wonder, will they be fully rested? Will they have legs? And I saw Don's comment in the chat here. Great point from Don. Let's see if Ohio State still has legs. They're coming back from a 24-point comeback, and that's not going to be easy to bounce back. So plenty of storylines heading into this game tomorrow.
But what do you think is going to be the difference with if Caitlin's handling the ball against the press? I haven't seen a press bother Iowa all year. I mean, she's such a great passer. Are they going to be able to, I mean, I don't think the press is going to give them the fits that it gave Indiana today.
There have been games, Roger, and I'm sure it sounds like you follow the Iowa women just as much, if not more than I do. There have been games this season where Iowa has turned the ball over, but for the most part, despite how Iowa runs the ball up and down the court like the Iowa men do, they do take care of the basketball. A lot of that is Caitlin Clark. But you got to give Gabby Marshall credit. She's not going to break you down off the dribble, but she is solid with the basketball. And frankly, Molly Davis is good with the basketball. So they've got good ball handlers. And you're right. We'll see. I mean, Ohio State had to use that to press today to come back. I will be interested to see how they utilize that, because, as you know, there are times when you break a press and it turns into easy buckets. And the last thing you want if you're Ohio State is to get into a big deficit because you brought the press out a little bit too often early. And Iowa, I know it's a quick turnaround, but they're going to see. I'm sure they were watching, or at least one of the coaches has tape from today's game against Indiana. They were watching that press and how it gave the Hoosiers fits. And this isn't the first time these two teams have played. You're right. They get Sheldon back, but I would be surprised if Ohio State presses as much, just because, again, they had to come back from 24 down. But I have trust in Iowa's guards to take care of the basketball. They've done so most of the time this year. There have been games, but for the most part, they've taken care of the basketball.
I was really shocked to see Grace Berger have so much problems, because I think she's one of the best guards in the Big Ten.
True. Yeah, that's a fair point. I don't know how many turnovers. Let's see, Berger had 20 points. Just had 2 turnovers, but yeah, I mean, Indiana's got a good guard court as well. So we'll see. Again, if I'm Iowa right now, with the way Gabby Marshall's shooting the ball, and with the way Caitlin Clark's shooting the ball, the way that McKenna Warnock's shooting the ball, I'm fine with having to come out of break press early. And, I think if you get this team on your heels, Indiana's not a team that offensively, I mean, they're just really good all the way around. And obviously that reflected in their 27-3 record this year. But Iowa, you get out in front and you're Iowa, it's hard to come back. I give Maryland credit today because Iowa built an early lead. Maryland fought back, tied it up at 79 late. If I'm Ohio State, I'm very careful of how I approach defending Iowa tomorrow. Iowa's, I think, going to be the heavy favorite, just points-wise, spread-wise. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how both teams approach that contest.
Well, the fastest way to get the team to quit pressing is to go through it and score layups or threes on transition.
Exactly.
And I think that's what I was the best at. I don't think there's anybody better in the Big Ten at that than they are.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you, sir.
So, well, hey, thanks for the time.
Thank you, Roger. Appreciate the call, sir. Good stuff, folks. Great calls here this afternoon as we recap Iowa's 89-84 victory over the Maryland Terrapins. A couple more comments here. Roy says, I understand Clark getting mad, but the attitude needs to improve. You're not the only one that feels that way, Roy. Some people would just say it's fire. I like Caitlin's fire. I did think she maybe let her emotions get out of check against Purdue briefly, and that does make me nervous when we get into closer games in tournament play, because I think she's a better player when she's calm and collected. But at the same time, you got to admit the chip that she carries on her shoulder at times, it gives her an edge that most players don't have. So, I don't want to call her a curse. She's a blessing and a curse, and don't take that the wrong way. Her attitude, the chip that she carries on her shoulder, and her edge, her fire, it can be a curse. But for the most part, that's one of the things that makes her great. So we'll see what happens, but can understand where you're coming from. Freedom Liberty, I didn't mean to forget Kathleen Doyle. Absolutely. Big Ten Player of the Year. She was fantastic her senior year. Sam Logic was really good as well. And for that matter, go back in Fran's stretch of great players. Peter Jock led the Big Ten in scoring, I believe, his senior year. Jordan Bohannon's the all-time leader in Big Ten in three-point makes in this conference. So both these coaches, Fran and Lisa, have done great things individually. James, I think I answered this earlier, but what are my thoughts on the refs today? Maybe they weren't the best. I didn't think they were as egregious as some people made them out to be. I think Diamond Miller's hard to guard, and Iowa's not great defensively. And when you're not great defensively, you tend to foul. And that's what I felt happened more often than not when Diamond Miller got the ball inside. Maybe some of those were ticky-tacky, but got to maintain verticality, move those feet, and at times Iowa was a little slow. Lemansky, Sonano deserves respect. Her offseason work and her physicality. Watch her on the court. A thrill. All right, let's go to Durrell MVP, who says a great win for the Hawkeyes. He's calling our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Durrell MVP, welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, Corey, how you doing this evening?
Doing good, man. How are you?
Doing good. This was a surprising the way Iowa won it. I mean, they took the lead early, and they kind of never let control of Maryland. I mean, Maryland would make some runs, but I never really thought Maryland had a chance to win the game.
I don't know, 79-79 with about 2 or 3 minutes to go, you start to sweat a little bit, but a couple big responses on the offensive end, and that was all she wrote.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, Caitlin Clark is an amazing player. unfortunately, Aaliyah Boston exists for her, but she's probably the second best player in all of women's basketball right now. And with Indiana losing and the way Ohio State had to come back, I think Ohio State's going to be worn out physically and mentally because this is the third straight Big Ten championship game Iowa's made. I mean, how valuable do you think that experience is going to be?
It's valuable, and it's like you said, it's valuable having not had to overcome a 24-point victory. And although Maryland came back resiliently today, Iowa didn't have to overcome that deficit. Ohio State did. So that's a fair point. I'll be anxious to see how the Buckeyes respond.
Oh, yeah. I think this could be one of the cases where if Ohio State gets down by 8 or 9 early, I mean, this could be a 30-point blowout for Iowa.
And Drill MVP, did you say that Caitlin Clark's the second best player in the country?
I believe so.
Okay. James says it's SEC bias.
Well, Aaliyah Boston is just a different animal. I'm sorry. But
what about Aaliyah Boston? I don't understand that argument. It just make the argument because I'd love to hear
she's
it.
able to get offensive rebound at a rate in which no other player is able to in the country. I mean, half the shots.
I'm just curious, what more does Clark need to do? She's getting triple doubles left and right.
I'm sorry, Corey. I'm sorry.
Aaliyah Boston. She averages more points than Aaliyah Boston. She shoots the three better than Aaliyah Boston. She doesn't rebound as well as Boston, but she does rebound well. What more does she need to do?
I'm sorry, Corey. It's just my opinion, okay? My opinion.
I've heard that before. I'm not saying she's not really good, and I'm not saying she's not a better pro prospect. I think Diamond Miller is a better pro prospect, but we can pull up the stats.
I get it. They've got different skill sets, so it's kind of hard to evaluate when you got such different skill sets. But and also, I hate to say it, Corey, but the winning that South Carolina does is also kind of key because they just win game after game after game, where Iowa occasionally loses. But I understand it's arguable. Caitlin Clark is the first best player in the world. It's not for women's basketball. It's not crazy to say she's 1 or 2. You can switch the order. She's a great player. She's a great talent.
Did you know that Iowa's number 7 in the country, Drill MVP?
Yes, I know. And they just beat the number 5 team, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, and they just beat the number 2 team on Sunday.
Yes, by Caitlin Clark buzzer beater, by the way.
Correct.
Yeah. Do not slip down if you're guarding Caitlin Clark with only 5 seconds to go. That's be good, helpful advice for Indiana.
So let's just real quickly, for the sake of this discussion, let's just look at the two players' stats. Aaliyah Boston for the season's averaging 13 points per game, 10 boards, 2 assists. She's shooting 57% from the field. Caitlin Clark, 27 points per game, 8 rebounds a game, 8 assists per game, 47% from the field. Those numbers aren't even close, Drew. They're not even close.
Yeah, you're those numbers aren't close. You're right. I'm surprised Caitlin Clark has 8 rebounds a game. That's surprising to me, to be honest. That's a lot.
For a guard.
Yeah, exactly. For a guard. Well, that's a lot for anybody, but especially for a guard.
Yeah. So I don't know. She's shooting, she's shooting 38% from 3. And does Boston even shoot threes? No,
not really, unless if it's one of those where she has to hoist it up type thing.
She's shooting 12% from 3. Clark is 84% from the free throw line. Aaliyah Boston, 75% from the free throw line. Boston, 2 blocks a game to Clark's 1. Clark, 2 steals per game to Aaliyah Boston's 1.
Okay, Corey. I get it.
Clark averages 27 minutes played to Boston's 26, so those are pretty comparable.
I get it, Corey. I get it.
Caitlin Clark all about stats. I'll give you that. It's not all about stats. I agree with you.
It's not all about stats. Oh, maybe it's just because of the team Aaliyah Boston is on is why I think she might be a better player. Maybe that bias impacted me because
Maybe it's because you're a Kentucky fan.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with it.
Oh,
the gap between Kentucky and South Carolina. We're in different tiers of basketball if you see Kentucky and South Carolina play this year.
I'm aware of that. of that.
Oh, and let me tell you something, Corey. Do not pull another girl's hair if you're within a 4-point game. Do not pull somebody else's hair, okay? That will just completely... Yeah, in Kentucky, Tennessee, it was a 4-point game, and then Kentucky player pulled the Tennessee's hair player.
There's just been some weird stuff. You saw, was it a couple weeks? What was the game? What was the game where the girl kicked the other player right in the groin? Did you see that the other day?
I did not see that
game, man. There have been some weird stuff. He got that sucker punch in the men's game the other day.
Kentucky got a fist fight 2 games ago. There was an 8-player fist fight or ejection. 8 players got ejected in Kentucky, Florida.
I did see that. Yeah, there have been some weird things going on in college basketball as it relates to fights and dirty plays and whatnot. So,
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe it's just we're entering March and the intensity is higher and people feel more pressure, and I guess that's what it's all about. But hopefully, we can avoid the fights and the extracurricular.
Yeah, I really like Iowa's chances to win the Big Ten tournament now. Unfortunately, they don't play Indiana, which will definitely hurt them if they're trying to get a 1 seed. But the good news, if you are looking at that 1 seed, is Stanford lost to UCLA. Utah's already lost, and LSU's got to play South Carolina tomorrow. And if LSU's going to probably lose 2 games all season, both to South Carolina, but their strength of schedules, like in the hundreds or 90s, I mean, it's completely off the map compared to Iowa or any team ever that's been a 1 seed, from what I understand. So there is, I think, a realistic chance for Iowa to be the 1 seed, if they win their conference.
It's possible. It's possible. I mean, that would be something. I a few weeks ago, I would have said it was impossible, but the great thing about the Big Ten is there's opportunities at some really solid high major wins against teams like Maryland, Indiana, and, probably would have done them better to play Indiana tomorrow if we're looking at resume. But Ohio State's still a top 15 team. They just knocked off the Hoosiers. So regardless, Big Ten championship helps, and a win against Ohio State will help.
Right. And I might have spoken too soon. LSU's only in a 4-point game against Tennessee right now. So LSU still can lose that game. But, Ohio State I saw is projected to be a 3 seed as of right now. So that's a solid resume win. And I was already defeated Ohio State earlier in the season. So if they beat them twice and a convincing twice with I imagine Iowa's net ranking has got to be pretty good.
I don't even know what do the women have a net rank. I haven't followed the net ranking at all for the women's game. I'm assuming they have a net ranking.
Let me pull it up.
I'm curious here. Got it in front of me as well. Iowa's ranked 7th in the net right now. So South Carolina, LSU, UConn, Indiana, Stanford, Notre Dame, and then Iowa. Maryland actually surprisingly down at 13. So obviously South Carolina's a lock as a 1. My guess is LSU is a 1. Now, if they lose today to Tennessee, maybe that brings that into question. See, UConn.
UConn's not going to be a 1. I don't think they're a 1 at all. They've just got too many losses. And against the Big East.
Yeah.
And they played too many close games.
They're 9th in the AP. Utah, though, Utah's at a lower net than Iowa at number 3 in the country. So it's an interesting one. Again, I don't. I guess I could just Google bracketology for the women.
I saw, what was it? I believe it's South Carolina, Indiana, Stanford, Maryland were the 1. Utah, LSU.
Charlie Cream of ESPN has Iowa at last check. It was updated this morning. Maryland was a 1 seed. The 4 1 seeds were Stanford, Maryland, South Carolina, and Indiana. So, boy, I don't know. The 4 2 seeds are Iowa, Virginia Tech, LSU, and Utah. So I guess maybe LSU's not a 1 seed. These resumes are certainly not reflective of the polls. So maybe Iowa is. Maybe they do get a 1 seed if they win tomorrow. With Maryland, Maryland and Indiana are both done. Neither one of those teams are playing tomorrow. So that is an opportunity, and Iowa's coming off wins against both of them. Now, they split their regular season games against Indiana, but they're 2-1 against the Terrapins. So, I don't know. It'd be interesting to talk to a bracketologist about all this, but good conversation, Peace Drill.
Yeah, no problem. And the only team I heard that plays tomorrow out of them is Virginia Tech. They beat Duke today, but they play an unranked Louisville team tomorrow who beat Notre Dame by like 24, 28 points, something insane.
Yeah.
So that would be a worse loss, you would think, than it would be a resume hurting loss if Virginia Tech were to lose that game.
And not nearly as good of a win.
Right, exactly. So I think it's definitely in play for Iowa to be a 1 seed.
Yeah, and M. Finn agrees. 1 seed if Iowa wins. So maybe that's the case. And boy, if Iowa gets to that 1 line, I mean, obviously you can lose to anybody. We saw it last year with Creighton, but I don't know that that's ever I'm guessing that has never happened. I'd have to look back in recent history. The recent history, they've been close, but I don't think they've ever made a 1 that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either, but the advantages of being a 1 seed versus a 2 seed, especially in a tournament like this. And you said, was Iowa in the same bracket as South Carolina? Is that 2 seed? Because if that's the case, I mean, their ceiling is probably the Elite 8. That's just for any team that has to be in the same region as South Carolina.
Now, you may know this better than me, but as far as bracketing and seeding is concerned, obviously South Carolina is the overall number 1. So my question is, I'm guessing that somewhere we can find the true seed list of this bracketologist for ESPN, but I'm assuming that means Iowa was would that mean that they were the 4th?
Yeah, they'd be the worst 2.
Are you sure that's how it's
that's how it works. The best 1 plays the worst 2, plays the best 3.
So that means assuming you're correct, Virginia Tech's ahead of Iowa in the seeding, LSU's ahead of Iowa, and Utah's ahead of Iowa. And so they would need some help. An LSU loss to Tennessee today would help, and a loss by Virginia Tech tomorrow to Louisville would help.
I still think it's doable. It's more doable today than I thought it was going into today for sure, and that's some positive news. The only negative happened was Indiana losing to Ohio State, but that win helps Ohio State's resume out tremendously. So it kind of goes both ways. Corey, good luck tomorrow. Back-to-back Big Ten champs for the Iowa women's Hawkeyes. How's that sound like?
Sounds great, man. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Hopefully, time at a win.
I think it'll be a big win. I think 35 points.
Bold prediction. 35 points will look pretty good on the resume. Thanks for the call, Drill MVP. All right. Great calls on our Iowa Smokehouse call online this evening. And if you're interested in sponsoring any of our Match Madness, don't sponsor that. Sponsor our March Madness coverage. Check out the bottom line. From the Eye of the Storm at Outlook.com. That's From the Eye of the Storm at Outlook.com. So the name of our show, From the Hawkeye of the Storm minus the Hawk. It's From the Eye of the Storm at Outlook.com. Yes, the Hawkeyes defeating the Maryland Terrapins 89-84 to advance to their 3rd consecutive Big Ten championship game. They'll have a chance to repeat. They won it last year, of course, against Indiana in the championship game. A reminder that we've got Iowa men's hoops tomorrow at 1 p.m. on BTN. It's the Hawkeyes and the Huskers senior day in Carver Hawkeye Arena, a sold-out Carver Hawkeye Arena. Iowa postgame with Coach Gary Close later in the day. Stay tuned to the channel for an announcement on the exact time of that show. It likely will not be immediately following the game, but stay tuned. We'll have postgame coverage with Coach Close. And then, of course, Iowa, Ohio State, the women in the Big Ten championship game, 4 p.m. Central Time, ESPN tomorrow. And yes, we'll have post-game coverage for that game as well right here with yours truly from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Corey Brad here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. All right, folks, appreciate everybody being here. It's been fun. I love doing these shows. I don't know that I could do a whole season of it because I'm not interesting enough myself. Maybe we'll try to pull some strings and see if we can get a guest tomorrow on short notice. No guarantees, but we'll try to do that. A reminder to follow me on Twitter, @FromTheHawkeye on Twitter, @FromTheHawkeye on Instagram, also from the Hawkeye of the Storm on Facebook. Please share the show out on social media. If you're enjoying the content, others will as well. You can become a premium subscriber by clicking that little join button next to the channel name below. Also, we've got merchandise, our merch, our hats, our shirts, our mugs, all of that is available. Click the link in the description below for details on our merch store, and you can shop Amazon with us. That's supporting the show as well. When you make your everyday Amazon purchases through our link, you are supporting the work done here at From the Hawkeye of the Storm. We'll talk to you following Iowa Hoops tomorrow, the women and the men playing. Stay tuned for announcements on the schedule for tomorrow's programming, but the Hawkeyes taking on the Huskers first up Sunday, 1 p.m. Central Time on BTN. We'll talk to you tomorrow, folks. Have a good night.